The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Houston's east side, where the skeletal remains of the old petroleum refinery stood like monuments to better times. The economic downturn had hit the city harder than anyone expected, leaving thousands of families scrambling to make sense of their new reality. While Houston had always been resilient, bouncing back from oil busts and hurricanes alike, this time felt different. The wounds ran deeper, touching every neighborhood, every family, every dream that once seemed within reach. Daniel Cooper sat in his cramped office above the Houston Event Center, staring at the stack of red-stamped invoices spread across his desk. At 42, he had poured every dollar of his inheritance into organizing what he hoped would be the event of the year. A concert featuring George Strait, the king of country himself. The venue could hold 15,000 people, and Daniel had bet everything on filling those seats. He had taken out loans, convinced investors, and promised his wife, Patricia, that this would be their breakthrough. But the ticket sales had been slower than projected. People were struggling. They were choosing groceries over entertainment, rent over recreation. Daniel understood that, even as it destroyed him financially. He picked up the framed photograph on his desk. Patricia and their two daughters, Melissa and Kate, smiling at the camera during last summer's vacation to South Padre Island. That trip felt like a lifetime ago, back when he still believed in his infallible business instincts. Now, Patricia worked double shifts at the hospital just to keep them afloat. And the girls had stopped asking for new clothes or school supplies without apologizing first. The phone rang, jarring him from his thoughts. "Cooper here." "Daniel, it's Frank." The voice of his stage manager sounded strained. "We've got a problem with the sound system. The main speakers are cutting in and out. Tech crew says they need at least 2 hours to diagnose and fix it." Daniel's stomach dropped. 2 hours? "Frank, doors open in 3 hours. George goes on at 8. "I know, boss. I know. But if we don't fix this, the whole show's gonna sound like garbage. People paid good money for this." Daniel rubbed his temples, feeling the familiar pressure of an oncoming migraine. "Do whatever it takes. I'll be down in 10 minutes. He hung up and stared at the ceiling, wondering how many more disasters he could survive before the whole operation collapsed around him. Across town, in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in the Gulf Gate neighborhood, Rebecca Hayes folded her son's laundry with mechanical precision. Her hands moved on autopilot, smoothing wrinkles from small shirts and matching socks in pairs, while her mind wandered to places she tried hard to avoid during daylight hours. It had been 6 months since the accident. 6 months since the plant foreman had knocked on her door with his hat in his hands and devastation in his eyes. 6 months since she learned that her husband, Michael, had been crushed when a hydraulic lift malfunctioned during the night shift. 6 months since her world shattered into before and after. The insurance payout had covered the funeral and bought them a few months of breathing room, but now that money was nearly gone. Rebecca worked as a receptionist at a dental office, but the salary barely covered rent and groceries for her and the boys. 10-year-old Noah and 7-year-old Tyler. She had started skipping meals herself, claiming she wasn't hungry, so her sons could eat their fill. The tickets to George Strait's concert had been an impulsive purchase, made during a moment of desperate nostalgia. Michael had proposed to her at a George Strait concert 15 years ago, down on one knee between Amarillo by Morning and The Chair, his face flushed with beer and courage. She had said yes before he finished asking, and they had danced until the venue closed, wrapped up in each other and the perfect simplicity of young love. Rebecca knew she couldn't afford the tickets. She knew it was reckless. But some part of her needed to go back to that place, to feel close to Michael one more time, even if it was just through music and memories. Her mother-in-law, Gloria, had agreed to watch the boys for the evening. Rebecca had told her son she was going out with friends from work, unable to explain the real reason, that she needed to say goodbye to their father in a way that made sense to her heart, even if it didn't make sense to her bank account. She placed the folded clothes in neat stacks and glanced at the tickets on her dresser. Section 204, row F, seat 12. She would go alone. She would listen. And maybe, just maybe, she would figure out how to keep moving forward. James Mitchell, known to everyone as Jimmy, sat on the worn couch in his living room, the television playing some reality show he wasn't watching. At 55, he looked older. His face deeply lined, his hair more gray than brown, his eyes carrying the permanent exhaustion of someone who hadn't slept well in years. The Afghanistan deployment had been his third tour, and he had returned home 8 years ago with shrapnel scars on his legs and deeper wounds no one could see. The Veterans Affairs Office had prescribed him medication for PTSD, but the pills made him feel disconnected from reality, like he was watching his own life through foggy glass. Eventually, he stopped taking them, preferring the nightmares he understood over the numbness he didn't. His wife, Carol, had left 3 years ago. She had tried, God knows she had tried. But living with someone who flinched at loud noises and couldn't hold down a job proved too much. She had remarried last year, moved to Austin, and started over. Jimmy didn't blame her. He probably would have left himself if he could. His daughter, Amanda, called once a month out of obligation rather than affection. She had her own family now, her own problems. She didn't need a broken father weighing her down. The concert ticket sat on his coffee table, creased and worn from being picked up and set down a dozen times. His neighbor, an elderly widow named Mrs. Patterson, had given it to him last week. Her daughter had bought her 2 tickets, but Mrs. Patterson's arthritis was acting up, and she couldn't imagine sitting in those hard venue seats for 3 hours. "You like country music, don't you, Jimmy?" she had asked, pressing the ticket into his hand before he could refuse. "Do an old lady a favor, and don't let it go to waste." Jimmy hadn't been to a concert in over a decade. He avoided crowds, avoided noise, avoided anything that might trigger the panic attacks that still ambushed him without warning. But something about Mrs. Patterson's kindness, about the way she looked at him with hope instead of pity, made him take the ticket. George Strait. He remembered listening to "Carrying Your Love With Me" on the radio during his first deployment, remembering home, remembering Carol. Back when things were simpler, back when he was whole. Maybe it was time to try again. Maybe one night of music wouldn't kill him. He picked up the ticket and tucked it into his shirt pocket, feeling its weight against his chest, like a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. Lisa Rodriguez stood in the bathroom of West Side High School, dabbing concealer under her eyes to hide the dark circles that had become permanent fixtures. At 17, she felt ancient, like she had lived several lifetimes while her classmates worried about prom dates and college applications. Her mother's diagnosis had come 2 years ago, stage 4 breast cancer. The doctors had given her 18 months. She had made it to 24, fighting every day with a stubbornness that Lisa both admired and resented. Because fighting meant suffering, and suffering meant Lisa had to watch her mother fade away piece by piece, unable to do anything but hold her hand and pretend everything would be okay. Her father had left when Lisa was 15, unable to handle the reality of his wife's illness. He sent a check once a month, sometimes, but Lisa hadn't heard his voice in over a year. It was just her and her mother now, in their small house near the 610 Loop, surviving on disability payments and Lisa's part-time job at the grocery store. The concert ticket had been her mother's idea. Anna Rodriguez had been a George Strait fan her entire life, had dragged Lisa's father to every concert within driving distance back when she was healthy. Last month, during one of her good days, She had asked Lisa to buy 2 tickets to the Houston show. "We're going together, mija," Anna had said, her voice weak but determined. One last concert, one last adventure. But this morning, Anna couldn't get out of bed. The pain was too intense, her body too fragile. Lisa had called in sick to work and spent the day administering medication, adjusting pillows, and pretending her heart wasn't breaking. "You have to go without me," Anna had whispered that afternoon, gripping Lisa's hand with surprising strength. "Take your phone. Film some of it for me. I need to know you're out there living, baby, not just surviving." Lisa had argued, had insisted she would stay home, but her mother had been adamant. So now Lisa stood in the school bathroom after her last class, trying to make herself presentable, trying to transform from exhausted caregiver into normal teenager for a few hours. She looked at her reflection and barely recognized the girl staring back. When had she become so thin? When had the joy drained from her eyes? Her phone buzzed with a text from her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who had agreed to sit with her mother for the evening. "Everything fine here. Your mama's sleeping. Go have fun. You deserve it." Lisa pocketed her phone and headed for the parking lot, where her beat-up Honda waited. The concert tickets sat in her backpack. Section 118, floor level. Expensive seats her mother had insisted on, using money they absolutely didn't have. "If we're doing this, we're doing it right," Anna had said when she bought them. Now Lisa would go alone. She would watch George Strait perform. She would film it for her mother. And she would try very hard not to think about the fact that this might be the last time her mother asked her to do anything at all. The Houston Event Center buzzed with activity as sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. Outside, vendors sold t-shirts and cowboy hats, while the growing crowd filed through security checkpoints. Their excitement palpable, despite the hard times they were living through. For one night, they could forget about overdue bills and uncertain futures. For one night, they could lose themselves in music and memories. Daniel Cooper stood backstage, watching the tech crew work frantically on the sound system. Frank looked up from a tangle of cables and gave him a thumbs up. "We're close, boss. Real close." Daniel nodded, though his stomach remained clenched with anxiety. The venue was filling up. He could hear the crowd noise swelling. But they were still short of capacity. He had needed a sellout to break even, and instead, he was looking at 70% occupancy at best. His phone rang. Patricia's face appeared on the screen. "Hey, honey," he answered, stepping into a quieter corner. "How's it going? Are you okay?" Daniel closed his eyes. Patricia could always hear the stress in his voice, no matter how hard he tried to hide it. "We had a sound system problem, but the crew's fixing it. Show should start on time." "That's good." She paused. "Daniel, whatever happens tonight, we'll figure it out. Together. Okay?" His throat tightened. "I know. I wanted this to work so badly." "I know you did. But you're more than this one event. Remember that." They said their goodbyes, and Daniel pocketed his phone, feeling marginally better. Patricia was right. He would survive this, one way or another. Rebecca Hayes found her seat in section 204, settling into the uncomfortable plastic chair with her jacket folded on her lap. The venue hummed with conversation and laughter. Families and couples and groups of friends all gathered for the same purpose. She felt conspicuously alone, the empty seat beside her highlighting Michael's absence. She pulled out her phone and looked at her wallpaper. A photo of Michael in his work uniform, grinning like a fool, his arm around her waist. God, she missed him. She missed his terrible jokes and his habit of singing off-key in the shower. She missed the way he could make her laugh, even on her worst days. A woman in the row ahead turned and smiled at her. First time seeing George? Rebecca shook her head. No, but it's been a long time. He's amazing live. You're in for a treat. Rebecca smiled back, grateful for the small kindness, and settled in to wait for the show to begin. Jimmy Mitchell climbed the stairs to section 3D10, his legs aching from the effort. He had arrived early, hoping to avoid the crush of the crowd, and now sat in his seat watching people stream in below. The venue was enormous, and he felt small and insignificant in the midst of it all. His heart rate had already increased, his palms sweating. This was a mistake. He should leave now, before the panic really set in. But Mrs. Patterson's face appeared in his mind. Her kind eyes and gentle smile. She had given him this ticket as a gift, as an act of faith that he could be normal again, even for one night. He forced himself to take slow, deep breaths, using the techniques his old therapist had taught him. In for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4. The panic receded slightly, becoming manageable. He would stay. He would try. Lisa Rodriguez made her way through the crowd toward section 118, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. She had texted Mrs. Chen 3 times already, receiving reassurances each time that her mother was resting comfortably. She found her seat, 7th row from the stage, with a perfect view, and felt tears prick her eyes. Her mother should be here. They should be experiencing this together, making memories that would last long after the cancer finally won. Lisa opened her phone's camera and tested the angle, making sure she could capture the stage clearly. She would film everything. She would bring this night back to her mother, give her a window into the world beyond their small house and its smell of medicine and sickness. A couple settled into the seats beside her, middle-aged and holding hands, radiating the comfortable affection of people who had been together for decades. Lisa felt a sharp pang of envy mixed with hope. Would she ever have that? Would she ever get the chance to build a life beyond caregiving and survival? The lights dimmed suddenly and the crowd erupted into cheers. Lisa's heart jumped, her phone already recording. It was starting. The opening act took the stage to enthusiastic applause. A young band out of Dallas trying to make their mark on the Texas country scene. They were good, energetic, and polished, playing a mix of traditional honky-tonk and modern country rock that got the crowd moving. Daniel Cooper watched from the wings, his anxiety temporarily overshadowed by relief that the sound system was functioning properly. Frank appeared beside him, clipboard in hand. "Boss, we got another problem." Daniel's brief moment of peace evaporated. "What now?" George's tour bus broke down on I-45, about 40 miles out. They're getting a replacement bus, but it's going to delay his arrival by at least an hour, maybe more. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. "An hour? Frank, we can't keep 15,000 people waiting that long. They'll revolt." I know. Frank ran a hand through his thinning hair. "The opening act can stretch their set by maybe 30 minutes. But after that, we're gonna have dead air unless we figure something out." Daniel's mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. He could make an announcement, be honest about the situation, but that risked people demanding refunds or simply leaving. He could play recorded music over the speakers, but that felt cheap and would kill the energy of the room. He could. "Wait," Daniel said suddenly. "Isn't George's band already here? They came in a separate bus, right?" Frank consulted his clipboard. "Yeah, they arrived 2 hours ago. Equipment's all set up, sound checked and ready to go." "And what about George's guitar tech, the guy who handles his acoustic?" "Bobby? Yeah, he's here too. Why?" Daniel felt a plan forming, desperate and probably insane, but a plan nonetheless. Get Bobby and tell him to prep George's acoustic guitar. Then find out if anyone in George's band can sing lead well enough to hold a crowd's attention. Frank's eyes widened. You want the band to play without George? Not a full set, just enough to keep people entertained until he gets here. Cover songs, classic country standards, anything that'll keep the energy up and the crowd from getting restless. That's actually not a bad idea, boss. But we gotta clear it with George's manager first. Then call him, now. We're running out of time. Frank hurried off, and Daniel returned his attention to the stage, where the opening act was launching into their final song. The crowd was fully engaged, swaying and singing along, blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding behind the scenes. Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. The girls are asking when you'll be home. I told them late. Love you. He typed back quickly. Love you too. Tell them I miss them. Another text appeared, this one from his accountant. Need to discuss payment plan for outstanding invoices. Call me tomorrow. Daniel pocketed his phone, pushing away thoughts of debt and consequences. Right now, he had to focus on saving this night, on making sure these people got the experience they paid for. Everything else could wait. Rebecca Hayes barely noticed the opening act, her attention drifting between the stage and her memories. She remembered the last concert she had attended with Michael, a smaller venue in Beaumont, where George had played an intimate show for a few thousand die-hard fans. They had driven 2 hours each way, singing along to the radio, Michael's hand resting on her knee while she navigated. You think our kids will like country music? Michael had asked during the drive home, his voice soft in the darkness of the car. Rebecca had laughed. They won't have a choice. We'll brainwash them, young. Good plan. He had squeezed her knee. Good plan. Noah and Tyler did like country music, as it turned out, though their tastes leaned more toward the modern pop country that Michael had always dismissed as watered down. Oh, but they would sit with her sometimes, patient and kind, while she played George Strait songs and told them stories about their father. Dad proposed to me at a concert just like this, she had told them last week, watching their faces for signs of boredom or annoyance. But they had listened, really listened. And Noah had asked questions about what their father had worn and what he had said. Was he nervous? Tyler had asked. Terrified, Rebecca had admitted. His hands were shaking so hard he almost dropped the ring. The memory made her smile now, even as tears blurred her vision. She missed Michael with an intensity that sometimes felt impossible to survive. How did people do this? How did they lose their person and just keep going, day after day, pretending life still made sense? The opening act finished their set, and the lights came up slightly. Rebecca checked her phone. 30 minutes until George was scheduled to appear. She texted her mother-in-law, "Everything okay with the boys?" The response came quickly. "Sound asleep. Take your time. Enjoy the show." Rebecca exhaled slowly. The boys were safe. She could be here, in this moment, without guilt consuming her entirely. That was something. Jimmy Mitchell focused on his breathing as the crowd noise swelled around him. The opening act had helped. The music gave him something to concentrate on, a focal point that kept his mind from spiraling into panic. But now, in the lull between acts, his anxiety crept back in. Too many people. Too much noise. The exits were too far away. He gripped the armrests of his seat, his knuckles white. A couple to his left was arguing about something trivial, their voices sharp and irritating. Behind him, a group of drunk college kids laughed too loudly, their conversation peppered with profanity. Jimmy closed his eyes and tried to find his center, tried to remember why he had come here in the first place. Mrs. Patterson had lost her husband 5 years ago. Jimmy had helped her carry groceries once when he saw her struggling on the sidewalk, and afterward, She had adopted him like a stray cat, checking in on him, bringing him home-cooked meals, treating him with a gentle kindness he didn't deserve. "You're not broken, Jimmy," she had told him once, sitting on his couch with tea and cookies. "You're wounded. There's a difference. Broken things can't be fixed, but wounds heal. Sometimes they leave scars, but they heal." He hadn't believed her then. He wasn't sure he believed her now, but she had faith in him, and that had to count for something. The venue lights dimmed again, and the crowd erupted into cheers. Jimmy opened his eyes, his heart pounding. This was it. George Strait was about to take the stage. Except he didn't. Lisa Rodriguez kept her phone pointed at the stage, recording everything for her mother. The opening act had been good, young and energetic, reminding Lisa of the bands her mother used to play around the house back when things were normal. She had captured several songs, along with clips of the crowd's enthusiasm, wanting her mother to feel the energy of the room. During the break between acts, Lisa texted Mrs. Chen. "How is she?" "Sleeping peacefully." "Don't worry. Focus on having fun." Lisa tried to take that advice to heart, but worry was her default setting now. She worried about her mother's pain levels, about whether Mrs. Chen would know how to handle an emergency, about the medications and their complex schedule. She worried about the future, about what would happen when her mother finally lost her battle with cancer. Where would Lisa go? How would she afford college? How would she survive the loneliness? A man's voice came through the speakers, polite but strained. "Ladies and gentlemen, we need your patience for just a few more minutes. We're experiencing a small delay, but I promise you, it'll be worth the wait." The crowd groaned and murmured, confusion rippling through the venue. Lisa lowered her phone, frowning. A delay? How long? She checked the time. 8:15. The show was supposed to have started at 8. People around her began speculating, their theories ranging from technical difficulties to wild rumors about George canceling. Lisa felt a flutter of panic. Her mother had been so excited about this concert, had used precious energy planning it. If something went wrong, if George didn't perform, Lisa wasn't sure how she would explain that to her mother. She pulled up her text thread with Anna and typed, "Opening act was great. Getting ready for George now. Love you, Mama." A moment later, her mother replied with a string of heart emojis. At least she was awake, alert enough to text. That was good. Lisa pocketed her phone and waited, hoping desperately that whatever delay they were experiencing would resolve itself soon. Daniel Cooper stood backstage with George Strait's manager, Ray Henderson, a weathered man in his 60s who had seen every possible concert disaster in his 40-year career. Ray listened to Daniel's proposal with arms crossed and expression skeptical. "You want my boys to go out there and play without George?" "Just for 30, 40 minutes, Daniel said quickly. "Just until George arrives. Otherwise, we're looking at a restless crowd and potential refunds. Your band is incredible. I've seen them before. They can hold the room." Ray stroked his gray beard, considering. "George won't like it. He's particular about how his shows run." "I understand that. But George is also a professional who understands that sometimes you have to adapt. Right now, we need to keep these people engaged and happy. What's the alternative? Dead air and angry fans?" Ray was silent for a long moment, then sighed. "All right. I'll call George and clear it with him. But if he says no, we wait in silence." "Fair enough." Ray stepped away to make the call, and Daniel found himself holding his breath, praying that the king of country would be as understanding as his reputation suggested. Minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. The crowd noise was growing restless, scattered boos mixing with the general murmur of confusion. Finally, Ray returned, his phone in hand and a slight smile on his face. George says yes. He also says to tell you this is the most Texas solution to a problem he's ever heard. And he respects the hustle. Daniel nearly collapsed with relief. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. Let's see if my boys can pull this off. The lights dimmed once more, and this time, instead of George Strait, his five-piece band walked onto the stage, carrying their instruments. The crowd's confusion was immediate and vocal. A collective, "What?" that rippled through the venue. The lead guitarist, a lean man in his 50s named Tommy, who had played with George for over 20 years, stepped up to the microphone. His weathered face was visible on the large screens flanking the stage, and he offered an apologetic smile. "Evening, folks. I know y'all are wondering where George is, and I promise you, he's on his way. His bus broke down about 40 miles out, but he's coming. In the meantime, George asked us to come out here and keep you entertained, if that's all right with you." The crowd responded with scattered applause and shouts of encouragement, though the disappointment was palpable. Tommy adjusted his guitar strap and nodded to his bandmates. "We're gonna play some country music for you. Classic stuff. Songs we all know and love. And if you feel like singing along, well, that's encouraged." He strummed the opening chords to Folsom Prison Blues, and recognition swept through the crowd. People began clapping along, and when Tommy started singing in his rough but earnest voice, thousands of voices joined him. Rebecca Hayes found herself singing too, the words automatic after years of listening to Johnny Cash. The song reminded her of road trips with Michael, of lazy Sundays with country music playing on the porch. The sadness that had been weighing on her all evening shifted slightly, making room for something else. Not quite joy, but a warm nostalgia that felt almost like hope. Jimmy Mitchell let the music wash over him, his tension easing fraction by fraction. The band wasn't George Strait, but they were good, and the crowd's enthusiasm was infectious rather than overwhelming. He found himself tapping his foot along with the beat, a small smile tugging at his lips. When had he last smiled at a concert? When had he last felt this close to normal? Lisa Rodriguez held up her phone, filming the band for her mother. This wasn't what they had expected, but it was still special, still worth documenting. She imagined showing her mother these videos tomorrow, explaining how George's bus broke down and his band stepped in to save the night. Her mother would love that story, would appreciate the improvisation and determination. The band transitioned seamlessly from one song to another. Ring of Fire, Mama Tried, Friends in Low Places, each one drawing bigger cheers and more audience participation. Tommy proved to be a charismatic frontman, telling jokes between songs and encouraging the crowd to loosen up and have fun. "Y'all sound pretty good," he said after finishing The Gambler. "But I bet you can do better. Let's try something we all know, something George himself made famous." He played the opening notes to Amarillo by Morning, and the crowd roared its approval. Daniel Cooper watched from the wings, barely believing what he was witnessing. The band had turned a potential disaster into something magical. The crowd was on their feet, singing at the top of their lungs, waving their arms in the air like they were at the best concert of their lives. Frank appeared beside him, grinning ear to ear. "Boss, you're a genius." "I'm a desperate man who got lucky," Daniel corrected, but he was smiling too. His phone buzzed. Ray Henderson's text read, "George just arrived. He's ready when you are." Daniel looked at the stage, at the crowd lost in the music, and made a decision. "Let them finish this song," he told Frank. "Then we bring out George." "You got it, boss." The band played the final chorus of Amarillo by Morning, and Tommy thanked the crowd one more time. "Y'all have been amazing, but I think it's time to bring out the man you really came to see. Ladies and gentlemen, the king of country music himself, George Strait. The venue exploded with noise as George Strait walked onto the stage, his guitar in hand and a warm smile on his face. He wore his signature cowboy hat and simple jeans, looking every bit the legend he was. He shook hands with each band member, then stepped up to the microphone. "Sorry to keep you waiting, folks," he said, his Texas drawl smooth and genuine. "But I heard my boys kept you entertained." "That's good. That's real good." The crowd cheered, and George strummed his guitar, checking the tuning. "Let's make up for lost time, shall we?" He launched into "Carrying Your Love With Me." And for the next hour, the Houston Event Center became a place where nothing else mattered except music and connection and the shared experience of being alive and present. George Strait commanded the stage with the quiet confidence of someone who had been doing this for over 4 decades. There was no flashy choreography, no pyrotechnics or elaborate costume changes, just a man, his guitar, and his band, delivering authentic country music the way it was meant to be heard. The screens on either side of the stage showed his face in close-up. Weathered but kind, his eyes crinkling at the corners when he smiled. The crowd sang along to every word, their voices rising and falling with the melodies. 15,000 people united by lyrics about love and loss, heartache and hope. Daniel Cooper watched from backstage, his earlier panic replaced by exhausted relief. The night was working. Against all odds, it was actually working. George finished "Carrying Your Love With Me" and transitioned smoothly into "I Cross My Heart," his voice as smooth as whiskey and honey. Couples throughout the venue turned to each other, swaying in the slow rhythm. And Daniel found himself thinking about Patricia. When this was all over, when they had dealt with the financial aftermath and figured out their next steps, he was going to take her dancing. Somewhere small and intimate, where they could remember why they had fallen in love in the first place. His phone buzzed. "Ray Henderson, need to talk to you. Now." Daniel's stomach clenched. He slipped away from his vantage point and found Ray in the backstage corridor, his expression serious. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked, dreading the answer. "We got another problem. The replacement bus that brought George here? Engine light came on during the drive. Driver says it's overheating, and he doesn't trust it to make the trip to San Antonio tomorrow. George has a show there, sold out, 20,000 people." Daniel closed his eyes. Of course, because one crisis per night wasn't enough. "What do you need from me?" "We need to keep the bus here overnight. Get a mechanic to look at it first thing in the morning. But that means George and the crew need hotel rooms, and everything nearby is either booked solid or too expensive for our per diem budget." Daniel thought quickly. "I have a connection at the Marriott downtown. Let me make some calls. I'll get you rooms at a reasonable rate." "You'd do that? Even with everything else you're dealing with tonight?" "Ray, George saved my event by letting his band perform. It's the least I can do." Ray clapped him on the shoulder. "You're good people, Daniel Cooper. This business needs more folks like you." As Ray walked away, Daniel leaned against the wall and allowed himself a moment of something that felt dangerously close to pride. Maybe he wasn't completely failing at this. Maybe he could salvage something from the wreckage of his financial decisions. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. Rebecca Hayes let the music surround her, eyes closed, Michael's face clear in her mind. George was singing "I Can Still Make Cheyenne," a song about a rodeo cowboy choosing between love and his calling, and Rebecca felt the familiar ache in her chest intensify. Michael had never been a cowboy, but he had understood the pull of duty, the weight of responsibility. He had worked those night shifts because they paid better, because he wanted to provide for his family, because that was the kind of man he was. When Rebecca opened her eyes, she realized she was crying. Not the quiet, dignified tears she had perfected over the past 6 months, but full body-shaking sobs that she couldn't control. The woman in front of her turned, concern evident on her face. "Honey, are you okay?" Rebecca nodded, unable to speak, and fumbled for the tissues in her purse. The woman didn't push, just gave her a sympathetic smile, and turned back to the stage. But a moment later, she reached back and squeezed Rebecca's hand. A brief gesture of solidarity from one stranger to another. That small kindness broke something open in Rebecca's chest. She had been holding herself together through sheer force of will, staying strong for her boys, never allowing herself to fully grieve, because there was always something else that needed her attention. But here, surrounded by strangers in the dark, she finally let herself feel everything she had been suppressing. She missed Michael. She was terrified of the future. She didn't know if she was strong enough to raise 2 boys alone. She was so tired of being brave. George Strait's voice filled the venue, steady and sure, singing about love that endures even when life gets complicated. Rebecca let the music hold her while she cried. And somehow, that was exactly what she needed. Jimmy Mitchell gripped the armrests of his seat as the crowd surged to its feet during "All My Exes Live in Texas." The sudden movement triggered his anxiety. Too many bodies, too close, too unpredictable. His heart rate spiked, and he could feel the familiar edges of a panic attack closing in. He needed to leave. He needed air. But then, something unexpected happened. The man next to him, a large guy with a gray beard and a Houston Astros cap, noticed Jimmy's distress. Without saying a word, he shifted slightly to give Jimmy more space, creating a buffer between Jimmy and the rest of the row. Then he leaned over and spoke quietly, his voice barely audible over the music. "You doing okay, brother?" Jimmy managed a nod, though his breathing was still shallow and rapid. "Afghanistan or Iraq?" the man asked. Jimmy's eyes snapped to him. "Afghanistan. How did you—" "Marines. 2 tours in Iraq." The man extended his hand. "Name's Robert Kavanaugh. My friends call me Cav." Jimmy shook his hand, feeling his panic recede slightly. "Jimmy Mitchell. Army." "Thought so. I recognize the look." Cav smiled gently. "Crowds get to me too sometimes. You want to leave? I won't judge. But if you want to stay, I got your 6. Nobody's getting near you without going through me first." Something loosened in Jimmy's chest. The knowledge that someone else understood, that he wasn't alone in this struggle. "I'd like to stay," he said quietly. "If that's all right." "More than all right." Cav settled back into his seat, maintaining that protective buffer. "Besides, George is about to play The Chair, and that's my wife's favorite. I promised her I'd record it." They sat together in companionable silence, 2 veterans finding common ground in country music and shared trauma. When George started The Chair, Cav held up his phone to record, and Jimmy found himself actually enjoying the performance. The panic pushed back to manageable levels. Maybe Mrs. Patterson had been right. Maybe wounds could heal, even if they left scars. Maybe he wasn't as broken as he thought. Lisa Rodriguez kept her phone steady, filming George Strait as he moved through his set list with effortless grace. She had already captured over an hour of footage, her battery draining rapidly despite starting at full charge. Her mother would have so many videos to watch, so many moments to experience secondhand. Between songs, Lisa checked her messages. Mrs. Chen had sent an update 20 minutes ago. "Your mother woke up asking about the concert. I showed her your texts. She's smiling." Lisa's throat tightened. Her mother was smiling. That alone made this entire evening worthwhile. George Strait stepped up to the microphone again, his expression more serious than before. "Folks, I want to thank you for your patience tonight. That bus breakdown wasn't in the plan. But my band tells me y'all were wonderful while you waited. That means a lot." The crowd cheered, and George continued, "I know times are tough right now. I know a lot of you are struggling. Houston's been through a rough patch, and I see it every time I come through here. But you know what? You still showed up tonight. You still found a way to be here, to listen to music and spend time together. That takes courage. That takes heart. And that's what Texas is all about." The cheering grew louder, and Lisa felt tears prick her eyes. George was right. It had taken everything for her mother to scrape together money for these tickets. It had taken courage for Lisa to leave her mother's bedside and come here alone. And looking around at the crowd, she suspected everyone had their own version of that story, their own reasons why being here tonight mattered. "I want to do something different," George said, adjusting his guitar. "Instead of my full-planned set, I'm going to play for as long as you'll have me. No time limit, no schedule. Just music. Just us. What do you say?" The venue erupted, and Daniel Cooper nearly had a heart attack backstage. Play indefinitely? That would throw off the entire schedule, create overtime charges for his staff, potentially violate noise ordinances. But then he looked at the crowd, at their faces lit with joy and anticipation, and he thought about why he had gotten into this business in the first place. Not for money or prestige, but for moments exactly like this, when music transcended entertainment and became something sacred. "Let him play," Daniel told Frank. "Whatever he wants, however long he wants. We'll figure out the logistics." Frank nodded, understanding. "You got it, boss." George Strait played for 2 more hours, well past the contracted showtime. He played his hits and deep cuts, covers and obscure B-sides, taking requests shouted from the crowd and telling stories between songs. He talked about his early days playing honky-tonks across Texas, about the mentors who had shaped his career, about his love for traditional country music, and his commitment to keeping it alive. The atmosphere in the venue shifted from concert to communion. People weren't just watching a performance, they were part of something larger, a shared experience that would become legend in Houston's music history. Strangers talked to each other during song breaks, sharing stories and offering drinks and snacks. Parents lifted children onto shoulders for better views. Couples held each other close. Rebecca Hayes felt her grief transform into something softer, more bearable. She would never stop missing Michael, but maybe she could learn to carry that loss without letting it destroy her. Maybe she could find joy again, even if it looked different than before. Jimmy Mitchell sat beside Cav, occasionally exchanging comments about the songs or sharing bits of their respective service experiences. By the end of the night, they had exchanged phone numbers, with Cav inviting Jimmy to a veterans support group that met every Tuesday at the VFW Hall. "It helped me," Cav said simply. "Might help you too." Jimmy pocketed the number, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Connection, possibility, hope. Lisa Rodriguez's phone battery finally died during George's rendition of Give It Away. But by then, she had hours of footage stored. She put her phone away and simply watched, letting herself be present in the moment, knowing her mother would understand. And Daniel Cooper stood in the wings, watching his financial disaster turn into the best night of his professional career, and realized that success didn't always look the way you expected. Sometimes it looked like taking a risk, adapting to chaos, and trusting that people were good and kind and worth fighting for. At 10:30 p.m., well past when the concert should have ended, George Strait stepped back from the microphone and spoke to his band. They huddled briefly, nodding, and then George turned back to the crowd. "We're gonna slow things down now," he said, his voice carrying that distinctive Texas warmth that had made him famous. I want to talk to you about something personal for just a minute, if that's all right." The venue quieted, 15,000 people giving him their complete attention. "I've been doing this a long time," George continued. "Longer than some of you have been alive. And in all those years, I've played thousands of shows in hundreds of cities. But nights like tonight, these are the ones that remind me why I started in the first place." He adjusted his guitar, his fingers finding the strings with practiced ease. "Music has power, you know. It can take you back to a moment in time, make you feel things you thought you'd forgotten. It can heal wounds and open doors, and build bridges between people who thought they had nothing in common." Lisa Rodriguez found herself leaning forward, hanging on every word. Around her, the crowd was completely still. "I'm going to play one more song," George said. "And I want you to listen, really listen, to the words. Some of you might need to hear them tonight. Some of you might need to remember them later. But I think this message matters, especially now, especially with everything y'all are going through." He played a soft chord progression, letting the notes hang in the air. This song is called "I Cross My Heart." Some of you know it from my movie, Pure Country. It's about promises and love and commitment, about showing up even when things get hard. And I think that's what all of you did tonight. You showed up. You kept going. You chose to be here, despite everything. That takes strength. The first notes of "I Cross My Heart" filled the venue, and something shifted in the atmosphere, something profound and almost sacred. George's voice, weathered but pure, carried across the space with devastating sincerity. "Our love is unconditional. We knew it from the start. I see it in your eyes. You can feel it from my heart." Rebecca Hayes felt the tears return, but this time they didn't hurt quite as much. This had been Michael's song to her, the one he hummed while doing dishes or working in the garage. She had played it at his funeral, barely able to stand, while the lyrics that once promised forever became a goodbye. But tonight, listening to George Strait sing those words live, Rebecca heard something different. The song wasn't just about romantic love. It was about all the promises we make to each other, all the ways we commit to showing up and trying and being present, even when life breaks our hearts. It was about the promise she had made to Michael's memory, to raise their boys with love and teach them about the man their father had been. It was about the unconditional love she would carry forward, not despite her grief, but alongside it. She wasn't alone in her reaction. All around the venue, people were crying, some quietly, others openly. The song had touched something universal, something that transcended individual circumstances and spoke to the shared human experience of love and loss and resilience. "From the ashes we can build, I'll hold you in my arms. That's where you'll stay." Jimmy Mitchell felt Cav's hand on his shoulder, a brief gesture of support and understanding. Jimmy's own eyes were wet, and he didn't bother wiping them away. This song reminded him of Carol, of the promises they had made on their wedding day, promises he had failed to keep when he came home broken and distant. But maybe it wasn't too late to make new promises. Maybe not to Carol. That ship had sailed, but to himself. A promise to keep trying, to accept help when it was offered, to show up to that veterans group Cav had mentioned, a promise to believe that healing was possible, even if it was slow and incomplete. Cav seemed to understand what Jimmy was feeling without words being spoken. That was the thing about shared trauma. It created a language all its own. "I cross my heart and promise to give all I've got to give, to make all your dreams come true." Lisa Rodriguez thought about her mother lying in bed at home, fighting a battle she couldn't win, but refusing to surrender an inch of ground without a fight. Ana Rodriguez had given everything to raise Lisa, had sacrificed her own dreams to ensure her daughter had opportunities and support and love. And now Lisa was trying to return that gift, caring for her mother with the same dedication and tenderness she had received her whole life. The song's promise resonated deeply: to give all I've got to give. That was exactly what Lisa was doing, what she would continue doing until the very end. And maybe that was enough. Maybe love wasn't measured in years or outcomes, but in showing up day after day with an open heart and willing hands. She wished her mother could be here to experience this moment, but in a way, maybe she was. Every video Lisa had taken, every message she had sent, those were ways of including her mother in this experience, of keeping the promise that they would face this disease together, no matter what. Across my heart, George Strait held the final note, letting it ring out clear and true. And then the venue fell into complete silence. No one clapped or cheered. They were too moved, too raw, too present in whatever private emotion the song had unlocked. George stood at the microphone, his own eyes glistening in the stage lights, and simply nodded, an acknowledgement that he understood, that he felt it too. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reminding an old country singer why this matters." And then the crowd erupted, not with the wild enthusiasm of earlier in the show, but with something deeper, a standing ovation that felt less like applause and more like prayer, like gratitude, like love being returned and multiplied. Daniel Cooper watched from the wings with tears streaming down his face, not caring who saw. This was why he had risked everything. This moment right here, this connection between artist and audience, this reminder that music could still matter in a world that often felt hopeless and broken. His phone buzzed. "Patricia, still awake, waiting for you. Love you so much." Daniel typed back with shaking hands. "On my way home soon. Tonight was special. I'll tell you all about it." George Strait played 3 more songs: Troubadour, Living for the Night, and finally, The Cowboy Rides Away, before thanking the crowd one last time and leaving the stage. The lights came up slowly, giving people time to collect themselves before filing out into the Houston night. You discover music. Rebecca Hayes sat in her seat for a long moment, not quite ready to leave. The empty seat beside her no longer felt like an accusation, but like a space held in honor, a place where Michael's memory could sit alongside her. She pulled out her phone and texted Gloria, "On my way home. Thank you for watching the boys." Gloria responded immediately. "How was it?" Rebecca thought about how to answer that question, how to put the evening into words. Finally, she typed, "It was exactly what I needed. I'll tell you about it tomorrow." She stood, gathered her jacket, and joined the slow stream of people heading toward the exits. As she walked, she found herself humming "I Cross My Heart." And for the first time in 6 months, the song didn't just make her sad. It also made her grateful. Grateful for the years she had with Michael. Grateful for the love they had shared. Grateful for the strength she didn't know she possessed. Jimmy Mitchell walked out with Cav, their conversation easy and comfortable despite having just met. They stood in the parking lot for a few minutes, neither quite ready to go their separate ways. "You really going to come Tuesday?" Cav asked. "To the support group?" Jimmy nodded. Yeah, I think I will." "Good. I'll save you a seat." Cav clapped him on the back. "Tonight was something special, wasn't it?" It really was. Jimmy looked up at the night sky, stars barely visible through Houston's light pollution. "I almost didn't come. Almost let the panic win. But you didn't. you showed up. That's the hardest part." They exchanged goodbyes, and Jimmy walked to his truck feeling lighter than he had in years. The panic attacks wouldn't disappear overnight, and he knew the nightmares would still come. But he had taken a step tonight, toward connection, toward community, toward healing. And sometimes one step was enough to change everything. Lisa Rodriguez sat in her car for a few minutes before starting the engine, checking her messages. Mrs. Chen had sent a final update. "Your mother is sleeping peacefully. Take your time getting home. Drive safe." Lisa pulled up the videos she had taken, scrolling through hours of footage. Her mother would love these, would watch them again and again, reliving this night vicariously. Lisa felt proud that she had captured so much, that she could give this gift to her mother. She started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, joining the long line of vehicles heading home. The radio played softly, a George Strait song naturally, and Lisa found herself singing along, her voice stronger than it had been in months. When she arrived home, Mrs. Chen greeted her at the door with a warm smile. "She woke up about an hour ago asking about you. I told her you'd be home soon." Lisa thanked Mrs. Chen and paid her from the small emergency fund she kept hidden in the kitchen. Then she tiptoed into her mother's bedroom, where Anna lay propped up on pillows, her eyes bright despite her exhaustion. "Mija," Anna whispered, "tell me everything." Lisa sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out her phone. "Better than that, Mama. I'll show you." They spent the next hour watching videos together, Anna's face lighting up with each song, her thin fingers tapping weakly against the blanket in rhythm. When they got to "I Cross My Heart," Anna reached for Lisa's hand and held it tight. "This was supposed to be our song," Anna said softly. "Mine and yours. Our last adventure together." "It still was, Mama," Lisa replied, squeezing back. "You were there with me, every second." Anna smiled, tears tracking down her hollow cheeks. "I'm so proud of you, baby. So proud of the woman you've become." "I learned from the best." They sat together in comfortable silence, the glow of the phone screen illuminating their faces, and Lisa realized that this moment, right here, right now, was exactly what her mother had wanted for her. Not just the concert, but the reminder that life still held beauty and connection and joy, even in the midst of suffering. That it was okay to step away from the sick room and breathe, to experience something wonderful, and bring that light back home. "Thank you for making me go," Lisa whispered. "Thank you for coming back," Anna replied. The sunrise over Houston painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day dawning over a city that had witnessed something extraordinary the night before. Social media was already buzzing with posts and videos from the concert, people sharing their experiences and expressing gratitude for George Strait's generosity in playing well past his contracted time. Daniel Cooper woke in his own bed for the first time in what felt like weeks. Patricia curled against him, her breathing soft and steady. He had come home after midnight, emotionally exhausted, but strangely at peace. They had talked for hours, Daniel recounting every detail of the evening, the disasters, the improvisation, the magic that unfolded when George took the stage. "I'm still in debt," Daniel had admitted. "The concert helped, but it didn't solve everything." "I know," Patricia had said, stroking his hair, "but you gave 15,000 people a night they'll never forget. That has to count for something." Now, in the morning light, Daniel checked his phone and found dozens of messages. Most were from attendees thanking him for an unforgettable experience. But one stood out, from Ray Henderson, George Strait's manager. "Daniel, George wanted me to reach out. He was impressed with how you handled last night's chaos. He's looking for someone to manage his Houston venue bookings and local logistics. Interested?" call me." Daniel read the message 3 times, hardly believing it. A job offer. A real opportunity to work in the music business at a level he had only dreamed about. It wouldn't erase his debts overnight, but it was a path forward, a way to turn his passion into sustainable income. He showed the message to Patricia, who squealed with delight and kissed him. "See? I told you it would work out." "You did," Daniel agreed, pulling her close. "You always know." Later that morning, after checking on his daughters and eating breakfast together as a family, Daniel called Ray Henderson. They talked for 40 minutes about logistics and compensation and expectations. By the end of the call, Daniel had a new position starting in 2 weeks, with a salary that would allow Patricia to cut back her hours at the hospital and spend more time with their daughters. When he hung up, Daniel walked out to his backyard and looked up at the clear Texas sky. He thought about all the moments in life when things could have gone differently. If he hadn't taken the risk on that concert, if the sound system hadn't failed, if George's bus hadn't broken down. Each disaster had led to improvisation, and each improvisation had revealed something essential about who he was and what he valued. He wasn't just an event coordinator. He was someone who believed in the power of music to transform lives, who was willing to take risks for things that mattered, who understood that sometimes the best nights were the ones that went completely off script. His phone buzzed with a text from Frank. "Boss, you see the news coverage? We're trending on Twitter. People are calling it the best concert in Houston history." Daniel smiled and typed back, "Send me the links. And Frank, thanks for everything last night. Couldn't have done it without you." "Anytime, boss. Anytime." Rebecca Hayes spent Saturday morning with her boys, making pancakes and listening to them chatter about their sleepover at Grandma Gloria's house. Noah wanted to know all about the concert, so Rebecca told him stories about George Strait playing for hours, about his band stepping in during the delay, about the way 15,000 people sang together like one voice. "Datausa, did you think about Dad?" Noah asked, his 10-year-old face serious and searching. Rebecca pulled him into a hug. "Every single second. But you know what? It didn't just make me sad. It also reminded me how lucky I was to love him, and how much he loved us." Tyler climbed onto her lap, his 7-year-old body still small enough to fit comfortably. "Do you think Dad can hear music in heaven?" "I think he hears everything we want him to hear," Rebecca said, kissing the top of his head. "And I think he knows we're going to be okay." She realized, saying those words, that she actually believed them. The grief hadn't disappeared. She suspected it never would, but it had shifted into something she could carry without being crushed by its weight. She could honor Michael's memory while still building a life for herself and their sons. She could be both widow and woman, both heartbroken and hopeful. That afternoon, Rebecca called her mother-in-law and thanked her again for watching the boys. "Gloria, I was thinking, would you want to come over for dinner tomorrow? I could make Michael's favorite pot roast, and we could look through photo albums together." Gloria's voice cracked with emotion. "I would love that, honey. I would really love that." After hanging up, Rebecca opened her laptop and did something she had been avoiding for months. She updated her resume and started browsing job listings. The receptionist position at the dental office was fine, but it barely covered expenses. She needed something with better pay and benefits, something that would give her boys stability and security. She found several promising positions and bookmarked them to apply for on Monday. The fear of change was still there, but it was manageable now. She was stronger than she had realized, more capable of handling life's challenges than she had given herself credit for. As she worked, she played George Strait's music softly in the background, and this time it felt less like mourning and more like companionship. Michael's presence woven through the melodies, always there, but no longer overwhelming. Jimmy Mitchell woke on Saturday morning without nightmares for the first time in months. He lay in bed for a while, analyzing this unexpected development, waiting for the familiar anxiety to creep in. But it didn't. He felt calm, rested, almost peaceful. He got up and made coffee, then sat on his back porch watching birds flit between the trees in his yard. The card Cav had given him sat on the coffee table. VFW Hall, Tuesday nights at 7. Veterans Support Group. Jimmy picked it up and read it several times, committing the details to memory. His phone rang. Amanda, his daughter. He answered cautiously, bracing for the usual stilted conversation. "Dad? Hi. I just wanted to check in. See how you're doing." "I'm good, honey. Actually, I went to a concert last night. George Strait." There was a pause. "You went to a concert? Dad, that's great. How was it?" Jimmy found himself telling her about the evening, meeting Cav, listening to the music, feeling something shift inside him. Amanda listened without interrupting. And when he finished, she said something that made his throat tight. "Dad, I'm proud of you. I know it's hard for you to be around crowds. That took courage." "I had help," Jimmy admitted. "Met a fellow veteran who looked out for me." "That's even better. Having support is important." She paused. "Dad, I'd like to visit next month if that's okay. Bring the kids to see their grandpa." Jimmy felt tears prick his eyes. "I'd like that very much." They talked for another 20 minutes. The conversation easier and more genuine than any they'd had in years. When they hung up, Jimmy felt something he had almost forgotten. Connection to his family, hope for the future, belief that healing was actually possible. He spent the rest of the day cleaning his house, preparing for Amanda's visit, and occasionally replaying moments from the concert in his mind. George Strait singing "I Cross My Heart," the crowd's emotional response, Cav's steady presence beside him. These memories felt precious, like proof that life could still surprise him in good ways. On Tuesday evening, Jimmy drove to the VFW Hall with butterflies in his stomach, but determination in his heart. Cav was waiting outside as promised and greeted him with a firm handshake and genuine smile. "Glad you came, brother. Come on, I'll introduce you around." The support group was small, about a dozen veterans of various ages and branches, and they welcomed Jimmy without judgment or pressure. They shared stories, offered advice, and simply existed together in a space where everyone understood. For the first time since returning from Afghanistan, Jimmy felt like he belonged somewhere. During the drive home, he thought about Mrs. Patterson and her faith in him, about the concert ticket that had changed the trajectory of his life, about how sometimes healing began with a single step into uncomfortable territory. He would thank her tomorrow, bring her flowers, and tell her what her kindness had meant. Maybe wounds did heal, just like she had said. Maybe not completely. Maybe not without scars, but enough to keep living. Enough to find joy again. Enough to matter. Lisa Rodriguez sat beside her mother's bed on Sunday afternoon, both of them watching the concert videos for the third time. Anna never seemed to tire of them, her face lighting up with each song despite the pain that was becoming harder to manage. "Mija, I need to tell you something," Anna said during a pause between videos. Lisa lowered the phone, giving her mother full attention. "What is it, Mama?" "I've been talking to hospice. They think it's time." Lisa's heart clenched. She had known this conversation was coming, but knowing didn't make it easier. Time for what? Time to stop fighting and start accepting. "The treatments aren't working anymore, baby. They're just making me suffer longer." Anna reached for Lisa's hand. "I'm tired, Mija. I'm so tired." Tears streamed down Lisa's face. "I don't want to lose you, Mama. I know. I don't want to leave you." But I also don't want to spend my last days in hospitals being poked and prodded. I want to be home, with you, making the most of whatever time we have left." They cried together, holding each other, acknowledging the terrible truth they had been dancing around for months. When the tears finally subsided, Anna cupped Lisa's face in her thin hands. "That concert, making you go, seeing your videos, that was my way of reminding you that life goes on. After I'm gone, you need to keep living, Lisa. Really living, not just surviving. You need to go to college, fall in love, have adventures. Promise me." "Mama, promise me, mija, please." Lisa nodded through her tears. "I promise. I'll live enough for both of us. That's my girl." Anna settled back against her pillows, exhausted, but at peace. "Now show me that video of I Cross My Heart one more time. I want to remember every detail." Lisa restarted the video, and they watched together, mother and daughter, making memories that would have to last a lifetime. The song played, George Strait's voice steady and true, singing about promises and love that endures beyond circumstances. "I cross my heart and promise to give all I've got, to give to make all your dreams come true." Lisa held her mother's hand and made a silent vow. She would keep that promise. She would honor her mother's memory by living fully, by pursuing her dreams, by carrying forward the love and strength Anna had given her. It wouldn't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever was. Later that evening, after her mother had fallen asleep, Lisa called the guidance counselor from school and scheduled a meeting to discuss college applications. Then she opened her laptop and started writing. Not an essay or assignment, but her own story. The story of caring for her mother and learning about courage and finding beauty in unexpected places. The words flowed easily, and Lisa realized this was something she wanted to pursue. Writing, storytelling, giving voice to experiences that others might be living silently. Her mother's illness had stolen so much from her, but it had also revealed strengths she didn't know she possessed and passions she might never have discovered otherwise. That had to count for something. That had to mean something. 3 weeks later, on a cold February morning, Ana Rodriguez passed away peacefully in her sleep, with Lisa holding her hand and George Strait playing softly on the bedroom speaker. The grief was crushing, overwhelming, a pain so profound that Lisa wasn't sure she would survive it. But she did survive. Day by day, moment by moment, she kept going. She planned the funeral, accepted casseroles from neighbors, and started the difficult process of settling her mother's affairs. And through it all, she remembered that night at the concert, her mother's insistence that Lisa keep living, the promise she had made. At the funeral, Lisa played I Cross My Heart during the service, and halfway through, she stood up and spoke, her voice shaking but clear. My mother loved George Strait. She loved his music, his authenticity, his commitment to staying true to himself. 3 weeks ago, she made me go to his concert alone because she was too sick to attend. I didn't want to leave her, but she insisted. She said I needed to remember how to live, not just survive. Lisa looked out at the gathered mourners, friends, neighbors, people who had loved Anna. That night, George played for hours longer than scheduled. He sang about promises and love and commitment. And I made a promise to my mother that I would live fully, that I would pursue my dreams, that I would honor her memory by being brave. She wiped tears from her cheeks. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to college in the fall. I'm going to study journalism and tell stories about people like my mother, people who fight impossible battles with grace and courage. And every time I hear a George Strait song, I'm going to remember that life is precious and short and worth living, with everything we have." The congregation applauded softly, and Lisa sat back down, feeling her mother's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder. She would be okay. It would take time, and the grief would never fully disappear. But she would survive this and find her way forward. Because that's what promises meant. That's what love required. 6 months after the concert, Daniel Cooper stood backstage at the Houston Event Center, now working full-time for George Strait's management company. He had coordinated 3 major events in that time, each one successful and profitable, and his reputation in the industry was growing. Patricia and the girls had come to tonight's show, and Daniel could see them in the VIP section, smiling and dancing. His debts were being paid down steadily, and for the first time in years, he felt secure in his career and confident in his abilities. George Strait walked past, heading for the stage, and paused to shake Daniel's hand. "Good work tonight, son. Everything's running smooth." "Thank you, sir. I learned from the best night of chaos imaginable." George laughed. "That night in Houston back in January? That was special, wasn't it?" "Changed my life," Daniel admitted. "Probably changed a lot of people's lives." "That's the power of music," George said, adjusting his hat. "When you get it right, when you connect with people where they really live, it can transform everything. Never forget that." He headed for the stage, and Daniel watched him go, feeling grateful for the opportunity and the lessons learned. Success wasn't just about money or recognition. It was about creating moments that mattered, about bringing people together, about believing that beauty and connection were worth fighting for. Rebecca Hayes sat in her new office at the insurance company where she had been working for 4 months. The pay was significantly better than her receptionist position, and the benefits package included college savings plans for Noah and Tyler. She had her own desk, her own responsibilities, and her own sense of accomplishment. On her desk sat a framed photo of Michael and a small card with the lyrics to "I Cross My Heart" printed on it. She looked at them often, drawing strength from the memories and the promises she had made to love her boys, to build a good life, to honor Michael by being strong and capable and whole. She had started dating again, tentatively and carefully, meeting people through friends and work. Nothing serious yet, but she was open to possibilities in a way she hadn't been 6 months ago. Michael would want her to be happy, to find love again if it presented itself. She knew that with absolute certainty. Gloria came over for dinner every Sunday, and they had developed a rhythm, cooking together, sharing stories about Michael, helping the boys remember their father while also building new memories. The grief was still there, but it had softened into something bittersweet rather than agonizing. Rebecca pulled up her email and composed a message to the boys' school, volunteering to help with the music program. She had been thinking about ways to give back, to create meaning from her loss, and supporting music education felt right. Maybe she could help other families discover what music had done for her, provided comfort, sparked memories, and reminded her that beauty still existed even in darkness. She hit send and smiled, feeling Michael's presence like sunlight through windows. He would be proud of her. She was proud of herself. Jimmy Mitchell sat in Cav's backyard on a Saturday afternoon, beer in hand, watching their combined families interact. Amanda and her kids had come to visit, and they had hit it off immediately with Cav's grandchildren. The kids played in the yard while the adults talked and laughed, and Jimmy felt more at peace than he had in a decade. The Tuesday night support group had become a cornerstone of his recovery. He still had nightmares occasionally, still struggled with anxiety, but he had tools now and people who understood. He had purpose and connection and hope. Amanda came over and sat beside him, her arm looping through his. "You look happy, Dad." "I am," Jimmy said, surprised by how true it was. I really am." "What changed?" she asked gently. Jimmy thought about that night at the concert, about Cav's unexpected kindness, about George Strait playing for hours and somehow speaking directly to Jimmy's wounded heart. He thought about Mrs. Patterson's faith in him and the support group's acceptance, and Amanda's willingness to give him another chance. "I showed up," Jimmy said finally. "I stopped hiding and started showing up, even when it was scary. And people met me there. That made all the difference." Amanda squeezed his arm. "I'm glad, Dad. I'm so glad you found your way back." "Me too, honey. Me too." Lisa Rodriguez stood on the campus of the University of Houston, where she had been accepted with a full scholarship for journalism. The fall semester would start in 2 weeks, and she had spent the summer preparing, working extra shifts at the grocery store, organizing her mother's belongings, and writing constantly. She had submitted an essay about her mother's illness and the George Strait concert to a national writing competition and won second place, along with a cash prize that would cover her books and supplies for the year. The essay had been published online, and she had received dozens of messages from people sharing their own stories of loss and resilience. Her mother would have been so proud. Lisa pulled out her phone and opened the folder of concert videos. She watched a few minutes of "I Cross My Heart," her mother's favorite, and felt the familiar ache of grief mixed with gratitude. Anna had given her so much: love, strength, perspective, and the courage to keep moving forward even when everything hurt. A text came through from Mrs. Chen. "How are you doing, sweetheart? Excited for school?" Lisa smiled and typed back, nervous but ready. "Thank you for everything, Mrs. Chen. I couldn't have survived without you. You're stronger than you know, Lisa. Your mother knew it. I know it. Now you need to believe it too." Lisa pocketed her phone and looked around at the campus, at students walking to classes and studying under trees, at the future unfolding before her. She had kept her promise to her mother. She was living, really living, pursuing her dreams and honoring the love that had shaped her. The grief would always be there, a permanent part of who she was. But so would the strength, the resilience, and the knowledge that even in the darkest times, beauty and connection were possible. She thought about George Strait singing to 15,000 people, about his generosity in playing far longer than required, about the way music had created a space where strangers could share their pain and hope. That night had changed her, had reminded her that life still held wonder worth fighting for. And she would spend the rest of her life telling stories like that. Stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, of communities coming together, of music and love and promises kept even when everything falls apart. She crossed the campus toward her dorm, humming "I Cross My Heart" under her breath, carrying her mother's memory like a light that would never go out. Years later, when people in Houston talked about legendary concerts, they always mentioned that January night when George Strait's bus broke down and he ended up playing for over 3 hours. The stories grew with each retelling: how his band had saved the night during the delay, how George had connected with the crowd in a way that transcended performance, how 15,000 people had sung and cried together, united by music and shared humanity. Daniel Cooper would tell his daughters about it, explaining how that night had taught him that success often came from embracing chaos rather than controlling it. Rebecca Hayes would play George Strait songs for her boys and tell them how music had helped her heal after their father died. Jimmy Mitchell would bring new veterans to support group meetings and talk about the concert that had started his recovery journey. And Lisa Rodriguez would write about it in her journalism classes, analyzing how a single evening could ripple outward and touch countless lives. But the real magic wasn't in the legend or the retellings. It was in the quiet moments that followed. Daniel making different choices about what mattered. Rebecca allowing herself to grieve and heal. Jimmy accepting help and connection. Lisa pursuing her dreams with fierce determination. It was in the promises kept, and the courage found, and the lives rebuilt from fragments and faith. George Strait had just been doing what he always did, playing country music with authenticity and heart. But sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes a song, a moment, a gesture of unexpected kindness can change everything. It was supposed to be just another concert, just another night of holding the crowd's attention. But it became something more. A reminder that even in hard times, even when life breaks your heart, music can heal and connect and transform. That showing up matters. That promises matter. That love, in all its forms, is worth every ounce of courage it requires. And that's a truth worth singing about.